underestimate how fast we actually get there. I think that when we think about, like from 20 to 30, didn't really notice that big of a difference. Even just look at our sex hormones. Like your sex hormones drop to 1% of what they were. It's like they fall off a cliff. All these women that are in perimenopause and menopause, we all grew up cardio bunnies. I need to lift heavy now, I guess, but we don't have any, like so many of these women don't have this motor pattern because I actually don't care that the weight is heavy or not. I actually care that you approximate muscle failure.
When we're talking deadlifting, we have to be able to pick up our kids or pick up groceries or pick up something and pick it up off of someone if they're hurt. Like what if a big bookcase I always think like God, and I know we talked about this on your podcast, but like God forbid something terrible happens and I can't help the person in front of me because I'm too weak. And I posed that question on my Instagram years ago in the stories, and I got so many responses from women saying, one woman told me that her kids were in a tractor accident and she couldn't even run fast enough to get there to help them in a timely manner. I had so many stories come in from women who were like, oh my gosh, I'm so out of shape that this terrible thing happened and I wasn't able to assist. And then other women saying this terrible thing happened and I was so strong and I was able to help. It's like, which one do you want to be?
Yeah. God, that's, I can't even imagine the, in the aftermath, like the thought patterns that would go through my mind if I only just went to the gym, like I could have helped my kids or I could have helped my neighbor, I could have helped whoever, but I wasn't strong enough to do it. Like that would be something that would haunt me.
Or fast enough. I was in Vegas actually at one of the malls there, and a woman lost control of her stroller. I don't know what happened, but the stroller, I'm sorry. The little toddler ran off from the stroller. So the stroller started going and she was trying to stop the stroller and deal with the toddler. And the toddler was running right into the road. And I lunged and landed in a position, like in a very deep lunge. I think most women my age probably would have like hurt themselves doing what I did. And I lunged and grabbed the kid. And the kid just looked shocked. I grabbed her by the arm and she looked completely shocked, and I stopped her and she was like this close to the road, and I turned her around and gave her back to her mom, and her mom's crying and she's like, thank you. I don't know what happened, but like too much was going on for her to, when you're postpartum, like you're not at your top speed usually. So it's things like that. Like we have to train for this shit because we don't know when it's going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah. Not all heroes wear capes. Yeah, that's a great story. I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and don't fuck yourself up. Like, don't allow a trip or a stumble to be what lands you in a hospital with a surgery. And any of us having, I don't want general anesthesia for any reason ever. So,
oh yeah, yeah. And I the other thing too is like you. I just lost my thought. I'm so sorry. I was thinking about the general anesthesia thing. I think that we underestimate how fast we actually get there. I think that when we think about, like from 20 to 30, didn't really notice that big of a difference, 40 to 50, I'm starting to notice things, but you will literally fall off a cliff. Like the amount of decline that happens in men, even just look at our sex hormones, like your sex hormones drop to 1% of what they were, right? It's like they fall off a cliff, but I think humans don't often think, we often think more linearly. We don't often think exponentially. There is an exponential fall off. So if you're not doing the work now, whether you're 30, listen to the show, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60, like it doesn't matter what age you are, you can always improve. But if you don't do anything, the amount of decline just accelerates, and it accelerates at a rate that you could not have predicted, because we tend to think, we tend to think linearly. Well, it's just going to decline a little bit the way that it did from 20 to 30 and the way it did from 30 to 40. It's like, from 50 to 60 and 60 to 70, if you are not holding down the fort and you're not learning these basic movements, like you're talking about a hip hinge, I think a squat is like, we can get into the technicality of a squat. One of the most difficult things to execute well, because there's a lot of sort of moving parts, a lot of moving joints, and there's a lot of ways that it can go awry. But if you're not working on that now, it's not going to get better next year, and it's going to get much worse.
Yes, and
so I think we also.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to.
No, I just wanted to say, I think we have to think about this. What does it look like to decline exponentially versus linearly. Like, I think that there is a bit of a linear decline. If you think, 20 to 30, 34, you lose your sex hormones and you go in through menopause, and it's like, this is where it gets real. So I think that it is very important for us to start at least stacking the deck. Whether you're menopausal or not, start stacking the deck in your favor. And part of that is resistance training. Like, it has to be in my opinion, it has to be the foundation for your movement program. Has to be resistance training, whether you like it or not. It's like, we're not going to talk about your feelings. I love your feelings. I want to listen to your feelings, but your feelings do not, like, we have to just look at data here. You have to make your resistance training the foundation of your movement program. And so for most people, I usually like to aim for something like a minimum of 2 times a week. More is better. Obviously, I'm training more because I love it, and I'm a bit of a psycho. So I love to train like 5 times, sometimes 6 times a week. But you don't need that to get results. Like, you can get phenomenal results, not just in strength gains, but in muscle hypertrophy, which are 2 different outcomes, by training twice a week. And we can talk about some of the parameters there as well if you want to dive into that as well. But that's all really that it takes, is like 2 times a week at the gym, or at the home or at the farm or wherever it is that you can sort of set yourself up with. That's all it really takes for you to start developing real strength and real hypertrophy in the muscle as well.
I agree. And what I wanted to add, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want people to understand that. And I don't want to say this to make anybody feel daunting, because you can build muscle at any age. However, from a clinical standpoint, I will tell you that things get a lot harder once you pass 50. You heal differently. Your regenerative properties change. And a lot of this has to do with hormones and stem cells and et cetera. However, the sooner the better. Like, I don't know how to get the pre-perimenopausal girlies to take heed right now. I'm talking in your 30s. This is the stuff you should be thinking about in your 30s and in your 40s, at the very latest, 40 years old. Like, if you can get a 10-year runway up to this, you're going to be sitting so much prettier than if you try to start after menopause. So I know that a lot of my listeners are menopausal and older. Actually, I think my age group predominantly, when I look at my insights, is like 35 to 65. And I know that there's women younger and older in my audience, but I'm telling you, start sooner than you think you need to. And I am a big proponent of starting hormones sooner than you think you need to, because of this exact reason, is the musculoskeletal impacts. I'm so excited that the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause is being talked about now. And that's the work of Dr. Vonda Wright. And we're hearing about this more and more through social media. But I have been utilizing hormones and strength training in patients for decades. And it is truly non-negotiable. And so to reiterate what you said, like, I actually don't care about their feelings about it. Like, I don't want to hear about their feelings about it.
You don't have, your feelings are not
I don't care. Like, this is not an option.
Yeah.
Like, you drink water, you breathe air, you eat nutritionally dense foods, and you strength train if you want to survive and thrive as you get older. Now, if you don't want to, and you want to just become dilapidated on the couch and be a burden on everyone else in your family, then go right ahead and continue on. And I'm not apologizing for that, because, like, seriously, fuck around and find out. It's not a fun game, and it's really hard to reverse things once we start accumulating these orthopedic injuries.
Why do you think that it is so hard for, like, I hear a lot of sort of myths that continue to perseverate, even though I don't know why. But what are some of the things that you hear about why women won't lift weights? Or, I mean, and the other qualifier I'll ask with this question is, why do you think that women don't push themselves to failure? Because I actually don't care that the weight is heavy or not. I actually care that you approximate muscle failure. And we can kind of get into that distinction a little bit too. But what has been your observation in terms of, like, what your community is saying in terms of why, like, what is your sort of take on why you think women don't like to either lift heavy or approximate muscle failure?
Okay, so I'll start out with the most unkind opinion I have, and I think it's because humans are generally lazy.
Well, neurologically, we're wired for that.
Right.
We are wired to expend the least amount of energy possible.
We're lazy primates, right? And so I don't say that as a personal diss on anyone, but we are. And I am guilty of it too. We're lazy primates. We shy away from discomfort. And I don't know what that personality trait is that you and I have that doesn't shy away from discomfort. Like, I go right into it and just let's go. Because I know on the other side, I'm going to get a huge dopamine rush out of it when I win. So, I like the challenge. Challenges are fun games for me. But I also think that it's a skill. I've thought about this a lot. That's such a good question that you asked me. I think it's a skill. And I don't think that skill is something you acquire by walking into a gym. It's something you actually have to invest time and money into to hire somebody. And I think that until recently, we had a real there was just a real lack of qualified trainers. Not that they weren't good at training people, but we are literally just rounding the corner on this idea where trainers are starting to understand that hormones are important here too, and that training a middle-aged woman is an entirely different process than training a 25-year-old woman or a 25-year-old man. So I think that we are finally starting to see the professions meld in a beautiful way, and we're all having conversations with each other instead of turf wars. And so that understanding is starting to have this calories in, calories out model has to shift, right? And I think it's a skill. I think a lot of these women don't have the skill. They're intimidated by it. They're intimidated by the daunting task of learning the skill, and the skill takes years. I found to develop.
Decades.
Yeah. So it's a commitment to a process. And then if you don't start seeing the benefits of your hard work early on, because there is often pain involved, like it will hurt worse before it gets better. And especially if you're someone like me with a lot of autoimmune pain, like you will flare yourself up before you will get over that plateau. And that's a tough one. So I think that, yeah, I think there's a couple factors there. But man, if I think of all the dollars that Doge is digging up on all the BS that our tax dollars are going towards, it would be super interesting to see what that would look like going into well-trained strength and conditioning coaches who could help. Could you imagine like if those dollars were reconfigured into something worthwhile? Because we really have and I also think, I'll throw this in the hat. I think a lot of people were not active kids, and we're seeing that more and more and more. My daughter's generation is just wrought with people who were not active kids. I was a very active kid. So when I became inactive in my teenage years, I turned into like a chain smoking punk rock girl who just wanted to be as skinny as possible. And the muscle memories there, that's truly a thing. Like those satellite stem cells are there and they're ready to be reactivated because they were trained as a child. And so I think we have that piece too of people who've literally never exercised. And now we're telling them like, hey, honey, you're not going to age well. This isn't going to go well for you if you don't do something about it. And they're like, where do I start? What do I do?
Those are really good insights. Yeah, I would agree with all of those. And I think, you mentioned like, what is it about the characteristics that someone can sort of wrestle with the pain and lean into the pain? I do agree with you. I think it is a skill that needs to be acquired. Anytime and this is why I always talk about, and we'll get into this a little bit, because we hear now like all these women that are in perimenopause and menopause. We all grew up cardio bunnies, and now we're all being told to be muscle mommies. And it's like, okay, I need to lift heavy now, I guess. But we don't have any, like so many of these women don't have this motor pattern, this like mind, they often call it like the mind muscle connection, but it's just essentially like a motor pattern, like the motor learning that you were talking about. And I think that to layer onto that, I think that the word failure, just in general, the concept, not the word, the concept of failure is something that we all really shy away from. Nobody wants to look like a beginner. Nobody wants to suck. Everybody wants to sort of step into something and be able to sort of master it without a lot of effort. And one of the things that I've often found, at least in the gym, is when I'm approaching muscle failure, as you said, it's an uncomfortable process. It hurts. There's a lot of like metabolic debris that's building up. There's a lot of these metabolites that are building up in the muscle, and your muscle's like, can you please stop? And you're like, no, well, one more.
On this episode of the Dr. Tyna Show, I finally got to bring on my friend, Dr. Stephanie Estima. She is seriously such a badass chick, and I adore her to no end.
For a lot of women, we'd like to pretend like that rage doesn't exist. It's like, it absolutely does. And if you continue to pretend that it doesn't exist, it will control you rather than you being able to control it.